And welcome back to Unmute Yourself. I'm your host, Jen Carter, and this podcast is about lifting the curtain on leadership, purpose, and the real stories behind women who dared to do things differently. We'll talk about how they found their path, the struggles along the way, and how they built something that truly matters. Now, these are normal people doing extraordinary things because I want you to know you are extraordinary too. We are about to talk about something a lot of women avoid: money, power, and the systems that control both. So she started her career inside major corporations like Mars and Wilson Art, learning exactly how companies make decisions, structure power, and manage the numbers behind it all. But here's the thing: most women are never taught how these systems actually work. Elsa Iris didn't even know accounting was a career until she got to college. Like, I can relate to that, right? Bet some of y'all can too. Now she's built a business helping companies, especially women-led companies, build real financial governance, strong boards, and structures that actually support growth. She's also on a mission to help elevate women's voices in finance and leadership, because when women understand money, governance, and decision-making power, everything changes. I'm so excited for this conversation, and welcome.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I want you to print that out so
Right?
I can put it on my website. That's
Right?
exactly it.
Like,
Yep.
bam, this is what you do. It's fun to see it from someone else's perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so, all right, Elsa Iris, let's start at the very beginning. So you've said you didn't even know what accounting was until you got to college. So tell us how that happened.
Yeah, literally. So I was a business major is all I knew. I'm a first generation college student. Nobody in my family had gone to college, but I knew it was really important to go. So I got myself into DePaul University. I got accepted to that school and one other, and I was like, screw it. DePaul seems like it's got a good business program. And I decided on that because it was 2008. And there was the whole financial crisis going on. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to repay these student loans. And so I think this is going to have the biggest ROI. Like I was already thinking in those terms without realizing it. And so I had my first accounting class, I think was my freshman year. I didn't even know what that was. I couldn't have, I had never met an accountant. I didn't know it was a career option. I didn't know what it meant for companies, and how important it was. And to be honest with you, like the accounting concepts flew over my head. I had such a hard time in all of my classes. Somehow I got a minor in accounting. I ended up majoring in finance because the investments and like the financial analysis and forecasting just made more sense to me at the time. And so I was like, okay, I'll just major in that. And if I ever want to get a CPA, I'll go back for that. I still haven't. Anyway, I didn't really like my classes because the concepts were foreign to me. Like, again, like I'd never seen this before, right? So I graduated from college. Somehow I managed to have an offer in hand before I graduated. I got a job offer from a company called Navistar. I think it was sometime in the fall of my junior year. I got an offer. At the time, I was interning for a boutique advisory firm. So again, still not quite understanding what's going on, but I'm like getting these job offers. And then I started my career, and I struggled so much because I also didn't have anybody in my family or in my community that had worked in a corporate environment. And so I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know anything. And I don't know. Those years are such a blur to me now. I worked my ass off as an analyst. Eventually, things started to click, and I realized I was really good at data, like analyzing data, building forecasts, building models that were dynamic, that made sense, that could help to drive conversations, ended up being my niche. And eventually, I made my way to management consulting, where I specialized in technical accounting. So all of a sudden, I was learning accounting. I was like learning
That's
how to
so
read the
cool.
standards, implementing um, a new revenue standard at the time that was like a really big deal for all these companies to adopt it. And so I was implementing a lot of parts of that standard and writing memos and, eventually became an accounting manager. And then somehow I landed a gig as a controller. And then I just got really good at it, like extremely good at it. Like all of a sudden the stuff started making sense. I was working with these like early stage food and beverage brands in that this like better for you space, like a lot of organic food, vegan food, stuff like that. And they were all these companies that were venture backed. At this point, I'm like 30 and I don't know what a venture capital firm is. Like, I have no idea what that means. I don't know the difference between seed, Series A, Series B. I don't know what that
You're just
means.
Googling stuff in real time.
Literally. Literally, I'm Googling everything while this is happening.
Right.
Right. But people trusted me with it because I learned quickly and I was willing to put in the time to get good at it. And I was willing to help other people learn because once I mastered a concept, I was able to then translate it to other people. And yeah, I think being open-minded went a long way for me and having that stability was really huge for me. Right. And so now I have my own consulting firm where I help pre-revenue and serious companies funded by VCs fundraise and scale their businesses so that one day they may get bought by whoever wants to buy them, whether it's a PE company or a huge conglomerate or just some other person.
I have so many
Go
questions.
on.
So, in the beginning, when you are in school, how did you not quit?
I have no idea. I was like also extremely determined to finish. I was very I had this desire to leave. I wanted to get out of my situation. It wasn't a great situation and I knew that my education was going to help me. So even if I didn't end up in a banking role or corporate role, I knew that this was going to help me. And so I just went for it. There were a couple of classes that kept me going, right? There was one class, it was a finance class that was taught by a professor who had worked at JP Morgan Chase for like 25 years. A lot of my finance and accounting classes were taught by people that were also working. So a lot of my professors were working at the big four accounting firms or were working for large banks. So they were teaching us real life concepts in addition to the academic side of it. And I had this, I think it's called financial statement analysis. And the guy was like just really good at teaching it. And I was like this is actually how how I fund my tuition because every year and every quarter I would quote unquote reforecast, right? Every year I would say, okay, this is how much money I have from grants, how much money I have from scholarships, how much money I need to then fill the gap, right? Because my tuition, call it, was $25,000, and I knew I had to estimate an additional amount for books and food and all that. So I would back into that number and say that's how much I'm going to borrow. And then my senior year, the interest rates had dropped. So I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to now take out a subsidized federal loan, and I'm going to pay off my unsubsidized loans that are at higher rates. So without realizing it, I was refinancing my debt. And these classes that I was taking were starting to click a little bit, right? I was like, oh, I do that. Like, I didn't know that was the thing.
And so now it's so fun to hear your story because you went from like, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. Like, how did this happen? How did I get an accounting minor? To now being an expert, right? A master, and you're helping other people do it. So I also am wondering, like, when you're helping different companies and different women with financing, and like, why do you think it still feels so inaccessible or intimidating to people? Because, when I hear those words, I do a lot of Googling. I ask a lot of Claude, and I feel like I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be fully functioning.
Okay, I love this question. So
Okay.
there was one particular class I took that is the basis of my entire career. It was called microfinance. And it was a capstone class I took my senior year, and it was between that and Islamic banking. And I was really excited about Islamic banking because they don't charge interest, at least how I understood it. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool because then I can go work for like large international banks. Anyway, I ended up taking microfinance only because it fit better in my schedule because I was working like 3 jobs to pay for school and not have to borrow so much. Anyway, this microfinance class was all about micro lending. So a lot of businesses struggle to get loans to start, right? Because you're high risk. Banks look at you and they're like, you don't have any assets for me to, be able to collect if you go under. What that class focused on was the fact that women have the highest repayment rates for loans. And a lot of times when women start their own businesses, they don't need that much because a lot of businesses they're starting are very practical businesses. And the worldwide example of how important this is Grameen Bank. So it was started by Muhammad Yunus in Asia. And what he learned was that if he loaned small loans to female entrepreneurs, they would repay it at a 94% rate at high interest, and they were using the loans just to help their families get ahead. So it could be a loan to buy a motorbike so that she could ride into town to sell whatever things to feed her family. And so he created a whole organization that is still around today that is just dedicated to lending to underserved or just underrepresented communities that may not otherwise have access to capital so that they can start their businesses. And to your question of what is it? Like, I think that a lot of times we don't realize how intuitive finance is. Like, you know what your life costs, right? Like you do. You know how many, most people, I would say, they keep track of their expenses. I think where a lot of people get lost is just like the details of it sometimes I think feel overwhelming, and so I try really hard to break things down, especially for first time founders that are intimidated. A lot of times I work with people that don't come from a network where they can just be connected to a venture fund or to a lender or have an angel network. And so I try really hard to prepare them for conversations when they are in that room, or so that they do feel confident in asking their friends and family for those first few loans or seed rounds.
Oh my gosh, this is making so much more sense because when I think of finance, I think of finance bros.
Yeah, totally. They
Right.
exist.
Right, right. Like, and I think of a completely different language that is spoken. It's the finance bro language. And it seems like you take it and teach it and help women understand it and make it like real life and not just this enigma or
Yeah,
this thing out in the sky that's like, I can never, like, I am not going to sit in a room with finance bros and feel comfortable. There's no way.
yeah,
So,
I don't blame you.
yeah. So, how do you, because I know you were in corporate for a while.
Mhm.
So, how do you take your corporate experience and what you learned there and apply it to what you're doing now?
Yeah, the thing that I'll always appreciate about my corporate experience is that I know what good looks like. As in, I know what a multinational, multi-billion-dollar company is set up like, with really intense, fully fledged systems and really fancy reporting. And I take those bare bones concepts and apply them to what I'm doing now. So I'm always thinking of, if I put together a financial model, or if I put together this deck for you to present to someone, I want this to scale. I want it to have tangible reasoning behind it. Because the truth is, your assumptions will change over time, especially when you're a small business. Like, what you think is going to work today may not work next week. Like, that's just how it is. And to that point, I learned the language. I learned how to carry myself. Earlier I said I didn't know how to act. I didn't. I was so lost. I didn't have the tact, I didn't fit in. I was the one of the only women, I think I was the only non-white person that was part of my rotation program I started at Navistar. And I really credit that program for pairing me with a mentor to help me learn how to navigate that. And so now today I try to impart some of that teaching in the way that I present, and I really pride myself in being transparent, because the truth is, as female founders and women in general, we get scrutinized so much more. And so my goal is always, I'm going to present to you with numbers, and I'm going to tell you how I got there, because I don't want you to ever think you can't also calculate the thing that I'm calculating. Like, for small businesses, like, the math is pretty simple usually.
Okay, so paint us a picture. So there's a female founder. What are some of the things that she would come to you for? And how do you help
Yeah.
her?
Yeah. So number one is, why do you want to raise money? And are you sure you want to raise equity? Because when you raise equity, you're giving away something, period. Nothing is free. Just nothing. If you give money, if you give equity, you're giving up a percentage of ownership, which means that investor or stakeholder now has some influence. Now there's pressure to do something because they want a return, right? Like, as with these early stage companies, like these, like, they're called seed or series stage companies, a lot of these investors know that the rate of return, is really iffy, and a lot of these companies go under really quickly because it's hard out here. So you have to be careful with who you take money from. Make sure your vision mission aligned. If you're taking it from a fund, make sure that you understand how they operate. Like, do they have like some expectation that they have a board seat on your board of directors? Make sure you structure your deals in a way that you're not limited in how you raise money later. Always protect yourself. first, and then consider debt instead of equity. And I know debt's a bad word for a lot of people, but the truth is, like, there are a lot of lending programs out there for small businesses, and you could actually like borrow a significant amount that gets you through that early phase of your business.
So interesting because it's one thing that and I work with a lot of solopreneurs and I talk with a lot of folks who are starting off on their own and what does that look like? And it's hard to even conceptualize. So what I really appreciate about what you're doing, you're so relatable. I think you make people not feel stupid for asking questions, right? And you really elevate women's voices. And you've said, you want to use your platform to help elevate stories that we don't normally hear. So what kind of voices do you think are missing?
Oh man, so many. I once read somewhere that it's like less than 10% of venture capital funds go to female founders or people of color. So that makes me really sad, right? Because you keep seeing the same types of products out there. Like something I learned in working with these called CPG brands, these consumer product goods or packaged goods brands, is there's a lot of trends that happen, and sometimes you have to wonder why. Like all of a sudden you're like, wow, everybody and their mother's making a granola brand. Well, that's because that's that's what's getting funded right now, and it's the same people. It's like the same circle of people, and you have these like first time founders that then sell, and then they start a different brand, and they just keep their same people in their circle. They'll bring the same people to work for them over and over again, and it really limits an outsider's ability to enter that circle and to take advantage of that ecosystem because there's a lot of smart people within that can help you. But if you don't know who to ask or how to get in, like, you get left out and maybe your idea doesn't get funded or you really struggle to get it off the ground more than you had to. So I really try hard to prop the door open. A lot of people have opened the door for me, in terms of my career, mentorship opportunities, leadership opportunities. And so I'm constantly figuring out how to invite people. So when I get invited to events where I think there's going to be certain people there and I have a friend or an acquaintance where I think would benefit, I immediately will invite them or try to share information. I started interviewing my gal pals that also work in finance and accounting. Think it's maybe somebody out there might think that this is a good career, and maybe they're like me, where they had no idea it was an option. And I also think that as finance people, we're always in the background. People don't know we're there.
Right. Right. And you're making it all work and all
Mhm.
run. And I think you answered this a little bit, but I want to dive a bit deeper. So, how does seeing someone who looks like you change the way you think about your own career?
Oh my God, it at least for me, it makes such a big difference. Like I feel seen and like I can relate to somebody a little bit more, right? When I first started my career, there weren't a lot of women in finance. And those women would tell you there weren't a lot of women in finance when they started. And what I've learned over the years is when there's other women that work in the same field, the dynamics shift a little bit. Like it's a little bit more collaborative. I'm not saying it has to be all women or all men for things to work, but I really appreciate diverse perspectives because it challenges us to think outside of the systems that have been put in front of us and we get told are the only option. So yeah, it's I really enjoy that. And we're also not a monolith. So if there's other Hispanics in the room, like they have their own story too. But I love that I can at least connect with somebody, at least at that first level.
Oh, absolutely. I would much rather hang out with you for finance questions than like the blue suit. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not my vibe.
Yeah.
Can I read a quote that
Yeah.
you said back to you? Okay, so when we did our prep call, you said, let's find it. I'm right most of the time, and when I let other people get into my head, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
So what helped you start trusting those instincts?
I started realizing that people, how do I want to say this? Like, I think I got so in my head thinking like, oh, like I'm not enough that I let other people make decisions for me or I let criticism get to me. And so I thought like, oh, I'm just going to go with what other people are saying. But then I realized that a lot of people around me were in the same boat as me. So why would I listen to anybody else? Why? And the times that I do listen to other people, it's because I trust them. I trust their judgment. But yeah, it's really just come down to experience and building my self-confidence and recognizing that most people are just trying to figure out just like you are, right? Like, and I don't want to ever belittle anybody else either, because like the truth is, like, especially in like the startup world, like everybody's just trying to get ahead, and we're better off sharing knowledge and information so that we don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, it sounds like it's separating like that helpful advice from just noise because nobody really knows what they're doing and nobody has all the answers and it's opinion. So you've got to do what's right for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciate the space to be able to talk about it too, because I didn't really ever see myself starting my own business. I was going through a lot of burnout and I was like, "Oh my God, well, I can't go work for somebody else. Like, so what do I do?" And I took a chance on myself, and I really appreciate how many people in my community were like, "Yeah, you could totally do it. I think you do great." And that surprised me a lot. I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I really credit a lot of my community and friends for believing in me and just straight up telling me like, this is what worked for me, this is what didn't work for me when I decided to do it, and so I'm just trying to pay it forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's scary going out on your own. And you
Yes.
yes, and you did it. And you're thriving. Okay, so big question for you. Okay, if more women understood money, governance, and power, how different would our world look?
I think we'd be a lot less on edge.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, I think that when you understand your cash situation and how to manage it, I'm not saying like we all need to like get rich, but like if you just like understand like the basics of like this is how credit card works, this is how a loan works, these are my options. Like if I'm ever in a situation where like I can't pay my mortgage, like this is when I call the mortgage company, right? I think people would just be a lot more chill, to be quite honest, and a lot less greedy. I think a lot of times people feel like because women, right? Like they feel like, well, I don't know that, so I'm just not going to pay attention to it. Like like they're part of this isolated group that's underserved, and it makes sense, right? Like women weren't allowed to get a credit card or a loan by themselves up until like the 70s. So like, yeah, of course, like you're going to have women who are getting paid less and all these things. But if more women were educated about their finances or felt more comfortable talking about it because it is a taboo topic, then I think people would feel a lot more comfortable with their situations. An example of that, I was in a conversation with some girlfriends. We were out and we were all talking about our mortgage situation. Like, and it was just a very open, honest conversation about stuff going on and like struggles and like different options that they were exploring. And I was like, oh, like this is really nice, because then you realize like, oh, other people are going through the same thing. Like I can ask a question or I can learn from their experience. And so now I feel better about my situation.
Interest rates all day.
Yeah.
Let's talk
Yeah. They
about it.
just they just went up so fast is the thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we are going to do a quick lightning round.
Yes.
So just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. So what part of yourself are you finally letting the world see?
My curly hair.
Curly hair, don't care. We don't have time for all that.
No, I literally don't. I think I was spending so much time trying to tame it.
Just let it go.
Yeah. And so now I'm just like, screw it. I'm just going to put some mousse in.
What story or belief about yourself did you have to unlearn to step fully into who you are?
That I'm too much. Yeah.
Okay, if you could unmute one truth people are too afraid to say, what would it be?
Unmute one truth. That you have to be an expert at something to try it, or to just or be confident. Like there's like, and I think this about music, because I started taking music lessons a couple of years ago and I really enjoy it. I'm not an expert at it. I'm an amateur musician and I love it. And you know what?
What?
That's okay. I don't have to like freaking be able to sight read at an expert level to say I can do it.
What do you play? I won't make you sing.
No, not right now. I haven't warmed up.
But I know that I feel like breaking into song myself. Okay, keep going. What boundary have you set that protects your sense of self?
Well, saying no to volunteer things.
You don't have time for everything.
Not for everything.
Not for everything. Okay. What keeps you grounded when you feel pressure to perform or fit in?
Man, thinking about all the networking events I have coming up in the next couple of weeks. Just going in with with just a couple of takeaways I need. Here's a couple of goals. Like, I'm gonna go to a networking event. I'm gonna talk to 2, 3 people. These are the talking points I'm gonna stick to. I'm in with here with a purpose plan. Hopefully I make a genuine connection. Go home. Limit my time. Just go home, have some tea, chill.
Have some tea and chill because otherwise it will swallow the rooms. Oh my gosh. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So this conversation has been so powerful. Thank you so much for your time. I think you're the first finance person that I've had a convo with on here. So it's been really interesting. And even just talking to you for these past, I don't know, 30 minutes, it's made me much less nervous about the finance world as an entrepreneur. So before we wrap, if listeners walk away remembering just one thing from this convo, what do you hope it is?
Just be open to learning. And if you're starting your own business, just really trust your gut, but also like find your community and lean on them because they're what makes a huge difference in making things easier for you that first year.
Awesome. And on a more personal note, what has it meant for you to share your story here on Unmute Yourself today?
It's very vulnerable and
Right.
very exciting. And I hope that my message reaches somebody. And if you need anything, I can share my email. I leave it in the show notes. I'm happy to help any founders out there. They're figuring it out, want to grow their business. I'm here for you.
Thank you so much, Elsa Iris. And thank you to everyone listening and for hopefully learning something new. And remember, you don't have to be perfect to start. And just remember, y'all, I work with senior leaders navigating high stakes decisions. So if you are feeling stuck on choices, you can find my contact info in the show notes. And as always, if this episode resonated, please share, subscribe, and stay with us as we explore what it means to live your purpose and lead without muting who you are. Until next time, unmute yourself and be who you already are.